Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to unpack this really fascinating connection between well-being and academic success.
Yeah.
And to really explore it, we're diving into the education system of a country that's always at the top of those global rankings. You know,
Hmm. Uh,
Singapore.
Singapore, yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting because it's not just that they're, high achievers. Their scores in like math, reading, and science are actually improving
Right.
over time.
Exactly. That's what makes them so interesting to look at. They're not just
Yeah.
resting on, past successes.
Yeah.
They're constantly pushing forward. And so we're going to be using a chapter from the book Physical Education and Wellbeing kind of as our guide today.
Okay.
So are you ready to kind of find out how Singapore weaves well-being into their education system
Yeah.
to achieve these amazing results?
Let's dive in. I think their journey is pretty remarkable. Back in 1965,
Mm-hmm.
Singapore faced like widespread illiteracy.
Wow.
But by the early 1970s,
Okay.
they had achieved universal lower secondary education.
Yeah.
And then in 2009, their first PISA results, those international assessments,
Yeah.
they were among the top performers globally.
So they really turned things around.
Yeah, it's a real success story for sure.
Okay, so then what's the secret ingredient? What's their kind of recipe for success? What are they doing?
Well, one key element is their constructivist approach
Okay.
to education.
What does that mean?
Think of it this way. Imagine a classroom where students aren't just passively absorbing information.
Hmm.
They're actually like building their knowledge.
Oh, so it's less about memorizing facts and more about engaging with the material and
Yes,
figuring things out.
precisely. So the teachers act as facilitators,
Okay.
guiding the students to discover and synthesize knowledge independently.
I see.
It's a dynamic process that really sets the stage for their whole approach to learning.
So they're really emphasizing critical thinking, problem-solving skills
Absolutely.
from the start.
Yeah. And this ties into their focus on well-being in a really interesting way. The chapter highlights 4 pillars
Yep.
of the Singapore education system. And these pillars are all about creating this environment where students can really thrive.
4 pillars.
Or-
It sounds like a solid foundation.
Yeah.
What are they?
First pillar might seem kind of obvious, but it's
Yeah.
really crucial. They deeply value and respect their teachers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In Singapore, becoming a teacher is incredibly competitive. They actually recruit from the top third of each graduating class.
Wow, that's like getting into a top university or something.
It really is. And they actually pay potential teachers during their training.
Oh, wow.
There's a quote from the chapter that I think really captures this. If you look at the status rankings of teachers in Singapore, they are accorded enormous social status
Mm-hmm.
by the community at large. So they're right up there with doctors, lawyers, judges.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I can imagine that level of respect must just have a ripple effect
Yeah.
through the whole education system.
Absolutely. It creates this culture where teaching is seen as a highly skilled
Right.
and valuable profession. Okay, are you ready for the second pillar?
Yeah, lay it on me.
This one might surprise you. It's physical education.
Really, I wouldn't have guessed PE would be a cornerstone of their success.
Yeah.
It makes sense, but I hadn't really thought about it before.
It's not just about physical activity, it's about holistic development.
Okay.
They invest heavily in training specialist PE teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And these teachers aren't just coaching sports. They're using physical activity to develop crucial life skills
Right.
like teamwork resilience.
So it's about more than just being physically fit.
Right.
They're using it to teach important life lessons.
Exactly. Professor Tanun Seng, he was a former director of the National Institute of Education in Singapore. Put it this way,
Okay.
and this really resonated with me. He said, first of all, we prepare a teacher to be, first, a teacher of the learner.
Okay.
Secondly, to be a good teacher of the subject.
Oh, so it's all connected. They see the teacher as a holistic guide,
Yeah.
not just someone who delivers information about a specific subject.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
Oh.
Now on to pillar number 3.
Okay.
This one focuses on keeping things grounded in reality.
Uh-huh.
So researchers from the National Institute of Education and directors from the Ministry of Education
Okay.
are actively involved in schools.
I can already see how this is different from a lot of education systems. It's not just people in offices making decisions without actually knowing what's
Right.
happening in the classrooms.
Exactly. They want to make sure that research translates into practical improvements.
Okay.
They're constantly working with teachers and making sure that policies are actually working on the ground.
That's a fantastic approach. I love that. It's so refreshing to see that level of collaboration and real-world application.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the final pillar? What's the fourth piece of this foundation?
It's something that we've touched on a bit already. Lifelong learning through professional development. In Singapore, teachers are given 100 hours each year for
Yeah.
professional development.
That's a serious commitment to ongoing learning.
It is. They also have multiple career tracks for educators,
Oh, interesting.
teaching school leadership and a senior specialist track.
Okay.
It really shows that they believe in supporting teachers throughout their entire careers.
I see how this ties back to that constructivist approach that we were talking about earlier. It's not just the students who are constantly learning and growing,
Right.
it's the teachers too.
Exactly.
Hmm.
It's all about creating that culture of continuous improvement.
Yeah. So we've seen how they value teachers prioritize well-being, encourage ongoing learning. But I'm curious now, what are the core values
Yeah.
that are kind of like driving this system beyond just the structural stuff?
Yeah, what's at the heart of their approach?
What can you tell us? Yeah, it feels like we've really uncovered some of the structural pieces that make Singapore's education system so successful.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious to dig into like the values that kind of drive it. What are they trying to instill in their students beyond just the academics?
Well, values are absolutely central to their approach.
Okay.
It's not just about grades.
Right.
It's about developing, well-rounded individuals.
So what are those core values? What are they really focused on?
They emphasize things like respect, responsibility,
Hmm.
resilience, integrity, care, and harmony.
Okay.
These aren't just abstract ideas.
Right.
They really permeate every part of the system,
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like they really...
from the classroom interactions to the activities the students participate in.
It's interesting how those values all kind of connect to this idea of like community and
Yeah.
shared responsibility. It's like they're trying to equip students to be like active, engaged citizens.
Exactly. And they have this great slogan that captures it perfectly.
Oh, what is it?
Teach lessons that outlast classes, values that last a lifetime.
Ooh, I like that. That's good.
Right.
But it makes me wonder, how do they actually teach these values?
Yeah.
Do they have like specific classes? Mm-hmm.
Or is it more integrated?
It's more integrated than that. It's more like weaving these values into the fabric of the whole learning experience.
Okay.
They've identified 5 social-emotional competencies
Okay.
that are directly connected to these core values.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Tell me more about those. What are those competencies?
They include self-awareness, self-management,
Okay.
responsible decision-making, social awareness,
Got it.
and relationship management.
So it sounds like they're giving them skills to really navigate the complexities
Yes,
of
that's it.
and relationships and all of that. It's interesting how those are both personal and interpersonal.
Mm-hmm.
It's about understanding yourself, but also being able to connect with and understand others.
Exactly. It's about developing that emotional intelligence alongside academic intelligence.
Yeah.
And the key is that these competencies aren't just taught like in isolation.
Right.
They're reinforced through everyday interactions and experiences
So they're creating a culture.
where these values are like lived out, not just talked about.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction. Because it's one thing to learn about respect
Right.
in a textbook,
Yeah,
but it's a whole other thing to experience it in your environment.
exactly. And here's what I find fascinating. This emphasis on values-based education
Yeah.
isn't unique to Singapore.
Really? So this is something that other countries are starting to recognize
Yeah.
too, the importance of well-being and character development.
It's gaining momentum globally.
Wow. It sounds like Singapore is ahead of the curve on this one.
They are in many ways. But the connection between values and education has a long history,
right.
particularly in religious contexts.
That's true. Like think about the moral teachings that are central to so many different religions.
Exactly.
It's about developing that sense of ethics and purpose beyond just acquiring knowledge.
Exactly. But what we're seeing now is this focus on values expanding beyond just religious schools.
Okay.
There's a growing recognition that these values are essential for everyone, regardless of background.
Yeah, I can see that.
The chapter even mentions this research project called the Faith Impact Project.
Okay.
They studied the shared values of different world religions.
Oh, that's really interesting. So did they find any common threads across all these different religions?
They did. They identified 5 overarching themes:
Okay.
stewardship, justice, solidarity and compassion,
Wow.
balance, and peace.
Those are some pretty powerful values.
They are. These are values that resonate across cultures and beliefs.
Sure.
And the chapter gives some specific examples of how different schools around the world are emphasizing these values.
Oh, okay, like what?
So, for example, we see Jewish schools focusing on kindness and responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Islamic schools prioritize strong moral character.
Okay.
Hindu schools promote self-discipline and gratitude.
Got it.
Buddhist schools emphasize compassion and resilience. And of course,
Right.
Catholic schools have their own set of values depending on the denomination.
Yeah, that's true. They're all a little bit different.
It's fascinating to see how these shared values are expressed in such diverse ways.
Yeah, it really just highlights the fact that at the end of the day, we all just want to raise good humans.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And this global movement towards values-based education.
Yeah.
It's not just some feel-good trend.
Right.
It's actually backed by some serious research.
Oh, okay.
The chapter brings in the OECD,
The what?
the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.
Oh, right, the OECD.
Yeah, you might know them for the PISA rankings.
Right.
Huh.
They're the ones that assess education systems all over the world.
Exactly.
So they're not just looking at test scores, they're also looking at the broader impact
They're looking at the whole picture.
of education.
Yeah, they released a report called Embedding Values and Attitudes in Curriculum, Shaping a Better Future.
Okay.
And their findings are really significant.
Okay. I'm all ears. What did they find?
They found that incorporating values into the curriculum actually has a positive impact on both well-being and academic development.
So it's not an either or.
It's not a trade-off.
You can have both.
You can nurture character and boost academic achievement at the same time.
It makes so much sense. It challenges that old school idea that you have to choose between academic success and well-being.
Exactly. The OECD also identified a set of universal values for citizens,
Okay.
and they're really closely tied to important competencies.
Like what?
Things like reflection, collaboration, respect, responsibility, empathy, self-regulation, persistence, and trust.
So it's really about equipping students not just to succeed in school, but also to thrive in life
Yes.
and to make the world a better place.
Exactly. It's about the big picture.
It's so inspiring to see a country like Singapore actually putting these ideas into practice and achieving such amazing results. But I think the big question for our listeners is, it's really inspiring to see how Singapore's kind of created this system that values both well-being and academic success. But like, how do we take what they've done and kind of apply it in other contexts, you know?
That's the big question.
It feels like there's so much we could learn from them.
There is, and I think you've hit on a crucial point. The goal isn't necessarily to replicate the Singapore system exactly,
Right.
but it's more about taking the core principles that resonate with us and figuring out how to adapt them to our own unique situations.
So it's more about kind of like taking inspiration from their success and finding ways to integrate those principles into our own educational practices, whether we're teachers, parents, or just lifelong learners ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the chapter ends with some thought-provoking questions that I think can really guide this reflection.
Okay.
So it asks, where do these principles resonate with your own experience or beliefs about education?
Okay.
And how could you incorporate some of these ideas into your own learning or work environment?
Those are great questions. I think maybe some of our listeners are thinking like, okay, this is all well and good.
Yeah.
But like, how does it apply to me?
Right.
So let's start with that first question. Where do these principles resonate with your own experience or beliefs about education?
Yeah.
What really stands out to you from what we've talked about today?
Well, maybe it's the emphasis on valuing teachers and giving them the support and respect that they deserve.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's realizing that well-being isn't separate from academic success.
Yeah.
It's actually a key ingredient. Or maybe it's that commitment to lifelong learning for both students and educators.
Right.
There's a lot to consider.
Yeah. For me, it's the way that they've created a truly holistic system. It's not just a collection of random strategies.
Yeah.
It's like this interconnected web
Yeah.
where each element supports and strengthens the others. It's like they figured out how to make all the pieces work together.
Right. It's really impressive.
Seamlessly.
And that second question is where I think things get really interesting.
Okay.
How could you actually take some of these ideas and incorporate them into your own learning or work environment?
So it's taking it from theory to action.
Exactly.
So if you're an educator, Maybe you start thinking about, okay, how can I create a more collaborative and supportive environment for my colleagues? Or how can I make these social emotional competencies a more explicit part of my lessons?
Yeah, great examples.
And if you're a parent, maybe you focus on nurturing those same competencies in your kids,
Right.
helping them develop self-awareness, responsibility, strong relationship skills,
Those are great.
all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And I think even if you're not directly involved in education, like if you're just someone who loves to learn, you can still embrace these principles in your own journey.
Absolutely.
Adopt that constructivist approach that we talked about.
Yeah.
Seek out opportunities for growth and development. And remember that learning is a lifelong adventure. It doesn't just stop when you finish school.
That's so true.
The Singapore model, I think, is just such a powerful reminder that we can create these learning environments that nurture both the mind and the heart. And that well-being is just essential for success in all aspects of life.
I love how this chapter emphasizes that well-being isn't a luxury.
Yeah.
It's fundamental.
Yeah.
It's so refreshing to hear that message reinforced.
Yeah, it really
by research and real-world examples.
Well, I think this has been such a fascinating deep dive into the Singapore education system.
I agree.
I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too.
And I hope our listeners have as well.
I hope so.
So to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this journey. And if you're looking for ways to apply these principles in your own life or work, please share your thoughts and experiences with us. You can connect with us on social media or leave a comment on our website. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, keep the conversation going.
And be sure to join us for our next deep dive, where we're going to be delving into those 9 competencies identified by the OECD, continuing this exploration of the vital connection.
That's right.
Between values, well-being, and learning.
Looking forward to it.
So until next time, keep diving deep and keep seeking those aha moments.
See you then.